Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Moravian Hall Square and to this, our Eventful Living program. How challenging was it to get in this building this morning? Unless, of course, you lived here. That's one of the great benefits of living here, folks. But we've got a treat in store for you this morning. David Geddes is our presenter this morning, and he is going to give us a wonderful history of the steel drum. And I don't know about you, but I know that whenever I hear the steel drum, I'm usually laying by a pool, enjoying the sunshine, and I think that's where he's going to transport us all today. David has actually come with us to us this morning from Media, Pennsylvania. And the most difficult part of his journey?
Getting here.
Was in the last 3 blocks. So we thank him for persevering and finding his way, and we thank you also. So please do enjoy the program.
Thank you very much, Liz. I am really honored to be here, and I think we're going to have a great time. This has been a long time in the works to get here because of COVID and things like that. So, and I know for y'all, y'all probably went through a lot too. So it's great that you're all here and can get back to having some good and interesting entertainment. I do perform quite a bit, but today's interaction with you all is going to be probably even more educational based than musical, because there's a lot to learn about this art form that most people have no idea. So with that, I would like to begin with this little rhythm. Welcome. That rhythm is called Fonga Alafia. It's from West Africa, and it's typically the first rhythm that little children learn in the West African culture when they're learning to play the djembe. This drum is a djembe drum. It's spelled D-J-E-M-B-E, like David Jeremy, DJ. Not too many words start with DJ. And by definition, if it's made from a djembe wood tree and has a goat or a cow skin, and it's this very specific shape, it's a djembe drum. The djembe is the most common drum in West Africa. It's played with several other drums in a percussion ensemble, and it's the lead drum. It's also the main drum that's used to communicate meanings. And this is very important. Now, you're all here for steel drum history, so you might be wondering, why am I starting with this djembe? But this drum is key to understanding how the steel drum came about. Because, does anyone know where steel drums were invented? What country? Trinidad, excellent. Actually, Trinidad and Tobago. It's a twin island nation, southernmost island in the Caribbean. When you go to Florida and Jamaica and all the other islands, the very last 2 you come to heading south are Trinidad and Tobago. And when you're up in the hills in Trinidad, you can literally see Venezuela on a clear day. It's about only 30 miles away. And it's important to understand the geography because around 1900, there were 3 very different populations living in Trinidad. A third of the island, and I'm just going to pretend you are the third that came from West Africa, and your culture heavily uses this djembe drum, not just for entertainment, but to mark cultural events and to communicate. Again, it's 1900, there aren't cell phones, the computers, even TV and radio are new. So drumming is very important. Now, the other third of the island, another third of the island came from India. And they play a drum called a tabla. And a tabla is very similar to this drum, but it's different also. And to make this a little bit easier, almost everything I say about the West African culture and the djembe applies to the Indian culture and the tabla drum. Okay, so things like they use it for marking ceremonies. What kind of ceremonies? Like the birth of a child or crops being harvested or pretty much anything, because when you play the djembe, you have to get 5 different tones out of the drum. Okay, this is kind of like language where we have vowels, they have tones. So depending on where you are in India or in West Africa, you will learn a specific language when you're a very young child on how to play the djembe or the tabla. And what do I mean? The language I learned is from Mali, and it's called Gunga Do Pata. And it's called that because the 5 main tones are Gun, Gado, and Pata. So you put those together, Gun, Gado. You might say Pata, 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 Gun, Gun, Gado, Pata. Now, the meanings from these phrases come together by a combination of 2 things: the specific tone and the rhythm that the tone is played. So if I go, that means something very different than, because the tone is different. If I go, that means different than, okay? And these languages have evolved over thousands of years so that people can communicate with drums. So that first rhythm I played for you called Funga Alafia, and there's actually a song to it. Funga Alafia, Ashe, Ashe, Funga Alafia, Ashe, Ashe, and it's a welcome rhythm. It's also what you would play before you tell somebody something. So if, for example, my wife just had a baby, and I want my neighbors to know, I would play it at my porch or my house. First, I'd play. That tells them, that's like an introduction. Dear Mark, I'm about to tell you something, okay? Then I would tell them we had a baby. Then I would tell them, was it a boy or a girl? Then I might tell them it's okay to visit us or it's not okay to visit us. So you play a whole phrase. And that would communicate, welcome, I had a baby, it's a girl, but we're not ready for visitors. And you folks, knowing this language, would play it, or your children would play it to other people, and the message would get spread. So in the West African culture and in the Indian culture, drum playing was not just for entertainment, and it wasn't just for celebration and fun, although that's a big part of it, but it was also used for communicating. Okay. The other third of the island's population came from England. Came from Europe, mostly England and Spain. And you guys were the ruling class. You ran the government, you ran most of the businesses, and you were basically in control of the island, okay? Now, when people learn this drumming, they learn it very informally, where a master drummer usually sits with children outside, and they do call and response. What's call and response? If I was teaching you guys, if you were little kids, I was the drummer, I might clap a rhythm. So let's just try this, okay? This rhythm is called Bo Diddley. Hold on. So I would clap it for you. You just listen. Let's try it again. So just listen to it. I'm going to do it one more time. Then when I stop, you clap it back to me. Okay? Go ahead. All right, that was pretty good. Let's do it again. We'll get it even tighter. Perfect, okay? So you just learned the rhythm called Bo Diddley. That rhythm's used as a backbone in all kinds of New Orleans music, and Zydeco music. My grandpa and your grandpa sitting by the fire, bonk, 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 okay? Now, the European folks were out walking around a lot in 1902, 1903, and they saw groups of kids and elders playing all these drums and clapping and making all this noise. And they didn't understand what was going on. And they got a little paranoid. And you all know sometimes when you don't understand something, it's almost human nature to fear it a little bit. They got scared, and they passed a law. 1902, you could not play a skin drum in Trinidad. And skin drum is referred to any drum, any shape, djembe or junjun, any drum with a goat or a hide of an animal, okay? It was outlawed. So you folks were extremely upset. 2/3 of the island, okay? You guys may not have had bad intent, but you did pass a law that made it very difficult for these groups of people to continue with their culture the way they were used to doing it, and especially how they interacted with children, because when they're teaching the drumming, they're not only teaching their drumming, they're telling stories, they're giving examples, the elders are trying to teach, it's philosophy, it's social etiquette, it's all kinds of things. So this was a big problem. But the Trinidadians, they're really a resourceful people. Can anyone tell me what this material is under the leis? Any idea what I have underneath here? It's hard to see, but bamboo. Great. And what's bamboo? Grass. Grass. Now, when I ask elementary school kids what's bamboo, you know what they reply? It's panda food. That's their perception of what bamboo is. But you're absolutely right, it's a grass. A lot of people don't know it's a grass. They think it's a reed or a tree, but it is in the grass family, just like the grass out here. And it grows 50 feet tall, and it's always growing along fresh water. And I'm sure you know how invasive it is. In fact, in Pennsylvania, it's now illegal to plant bamboo just because it's so invasive. But that was actually a blessing for the people in Trinidad. They realized something really clever, which was, if we want to keep passing these rhythms down and we can't use the skin drums, we need to use something. And they realized we can take bamboo, and if we take different heights and different thicknesses and hit it on the ground, it'll have a sound. And by chance, if you use different sizes, you get different sounds. Right? You hear the difference? Not only that, if you took a little piece of bamboo, and I'm cheating, this is aluminum, but so maybe if I wanted to play Funga Alafia on my djembe, maybe I could transfer it to bamboo, especially if there were a couple of us and we had many pieces of bamboo, but okay? So all over Trinidad around 1903, all the places where people used to sit and do skin drumming, they started using bamboo. And these were called bamboo tambu bands, okay? And they literally would be lots of elders, lots of bamboo. Some people got real good. They could do 3 or 4 sticks at a time. They do the cross sticking, and they were able to take every rhythm that they could play on the tabla or the djembe, and they could play it using bamboo. And they kind of saved the day, and everybody was happy, but that only lasted about 18 months. And I'm sorry I'm making you guys the evil guys in this story, okay? And no preference, honest. But you know what you all did after 18 months? You passed a law banning the use of bamboo as a musical instrument because, again, you just didn't really understand what was happening. Your music at the time was harpsichords, pianos, classical music, strings, nothing like this percussive stuff. And it scared you. You thought people might be organizing and doing bad things. So you passed a law. If you're caught with bamboo, the bamboo is taken away. And if you're caught a second time with bamboo, then you can be arrested. And that's what happened in Trinidad for another about 2 years. And if you go back to your apartments or homes and you go on Google and you search bamboo tambu Trinidad 05 or wherever, you can read all these articles about Mr. and Mrs. Smith were caught with bamboo down by the river, arrested. This really happened. I've told this story a million times, and it still blows my mind that this all really happened. But anyhow. Okay, so now you have 2/3 of the island, and nobody can play skin drums or bamboo. What are we going to do? We want to teach the kids the rhythms, and it's an activity that's part of our culture. They started collecting discarded metal. Anything they could find in the fields, a piece of a car, part of a stroller, part of a chair, anything they could find that they could tap on and just by chance get a sound. And they brought these different pieces of metal to these yards. It was originally the drumming yard and then the bamboo tambu yard. And they would set them out and they would just, in the beginning, start to play these pieces of metal. And it was difficult. The bamboo, you got a really good tone. But, you know, metal just has a kind of, it's short sound. But even still, you might, you know, you could get it percussive, but it was hard to get the tones. But by chance, a couple people picked up some real little paint cans and biscuit pans, and they put them out, and just by chance, they heard something which was something like this. Just that difference in pitch. Okay, so don't try to hear the note per se, but just the metallic sound. And one boy in particular, his name was Spree Simon, he had 2 cans, and he said, you know what? Those 2 cans are about 1/5 apart. He recognized the interval of 1/5. On a piano, like from C to G is 1/5. Now, 1/5 is important musically because it's the beginning of so many nursery rhymes and songs that everyone across the world knows in different cultures. So he played these 2 notes. He said, oh my God, that's the beginning of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. I need to find another piece of metal that would play the next note. So he picked up a little biscuit tin and he had this. And it was of no help at all. And he picked up another piece. And that didn't help. And he kept collecting pieces. No good. He found one. So now he had 3 pieces. And then he collected another and another until he could literally walk down this little row and he had Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star being played on a bunch of junk metal. And everybody was like gaga, and they said, hey, now we can play Funga Alafia too. You could, if we have 5, it doesn't matter what they are, if we just assign them a low note, two notes that are a little bit apart, and then 2 more notes that are higher pitched but far apart. So suddenly they could go like, or, and all of a sudden, just on metal, they could start playing these rhythms. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. And the light bulb kind of got turned on. People were collecting metal. And another boy, he was 11 years old, his name was Ellie Minette, he saw this and he said, you know what? Down by the Pitch Lakes, they have big pieces of metal. What are the Pitch Lakes? Okay, here's something cool you can say you learned today probably that you wouldn't have if you didn't come here. 75% of the world's asphalt for paving highways comes out of the Pitch Lakes of Trinidad. These are literally like petroleum oil, thick, tarry lakes that bubble up every night, and trucks come out and they scrape all this stuff up. It gets put in these huge metal containers and gets shipped all over the world. The tar lakes of Trinidad. Well, Ellie said, you know what, down at that place, they have some pretty big hunks of metal, including some 55-gallon oil barrels. So he went down there, he stole a barrel, he brought it back to one of these yards, and he said, look, we don't need to collect 20 pieces of little metal. Take this big barrel, and let me just chisel in some sections, and if they're different sizes, they'll have different tones. And then a few times later, he said, you know what? I could even get more different areas in this if I pushed the top down and spread it out so I had more surface area. So Ellie and a couple people around 1920 really started developing this art form using raw materials, oil barrels, other metal containers down in Trinidad to try to get tuned pitches into metal. Okay? Now, I'm gonna kind of be brief on this because I really do want to play some music for you. But what's really important is that you understand that this instrument was born after a government was really trying to oppress people with what they could or couldn't do, and that the Trinidadians went from skin drums to bamboo to metal. And these early metal bands were called steel bands. It was the beginning of steel bands. They weren't steel drum bands, they were steel bands, and they would parade down the streets of Trinidad during Carnival, everybody carrying metal, some people carrying bigger barrels, but you had the beginning of this new art form. And everything was fine, kind of, except that this was happening in all these different neighborhoods all over Trinidad. And it started becoming very competitive. So within your group, let's say you all lived in a place called Laventil. You guys, and it was mostly men, it was mostly boys, young boys in the beginning in these groups. You'd have a little steel band, and you would want to play so much that you could travel down to the Indian section and play and maybe win over the hearts of some of the Indian girls. Okay? And the little steel bands that were starting in your part of town didn't like that. So there were clashes, and it was very physical and almost gang-like, for real, in the beginning. But it was all about trying to impress the girls and to get them to hang out. And the better sound you had, the more you could win over the girls. So all these little bands became real competitive with one another. And they tried to figure out, how can we get our sound better? So what did they do? For example, they might take their, I'll say drum, what they begin to make into a drum, and they would leave it in the sun all day. And another group would take their drum and put it in the ocean, let it sit in the ocean all day, take it out and hit on it. Another person put it in the ocean and then put it over a fire. They were experimenting, okay? They were trying to get an understanding of how can I get a sound that maybe was like this to more like this, to more like this. And they were just hearing things. As they were working the metal, they just were hearing things by trial and error. The note may not be on, but all of a sudden there was a characteristic sound that was really haunting and very appealing. You hear a lot of overtones in there, right? So people started experimenting more, and they used pitch pipes, and they had access to pianos, and they're like, let's try to put a few notes on here that really are the proper notes that could go with the piano or, be on key. And so there was a period of tremendous experimenting. And again, these two young boys separated themselves from everyone at the time, Spree Simon and Ellie Minette. And they were both young. When they started, they were only about 10, 11 years old. But they got fascinated by this, and they were in two different parts of the island, but they both started developing very similar things, even though they weren't talking too much at this time, okay? So you had all this experimenting. Now you had access to a larger raw material, and from about 1930 to about 1940, you really have the whole development of this instrument, and it went from a single pan. In Trinidad, they don't call these drums, they call them pans. From a single pan with maybe 8 or 9 notes to a double pan instrument with maybe 16 notes, to a triple pan instrument with larger notes that was lower, to finally a bass instrument with 9 barrels around you with only 3 notes on each, but the drums were so large, the oil barrels, they could get a low sound. So all of a sudden you could start orchestrating music. And that's what they did. The single pan, which this is sort of like it. I'll tell you about this later. But it might play a little melody like, okay, so that's playing a little melody while the double instrument might be strumming chords. right? And the bass pan, while that's happening, might just be adding a bass line. But you put that together and you start having music if things can be tuned relatively close to one another. And this is what led to this whole art form. And then individuals in each of these groups who were just obsessed with trying to turn this into a real musical instrument began working at it. And over the next 20 years, people developed so many, people had so many observations while doing this. And the drums are made with hammers, ball-peen hammers. And you hit the metal hard, you work it from both sides. There's nothing else in here. This was the bottom of an oil barrel. If you take a 55-gallon oil barrel, the top has 2 holes where you would fill it with fluid. But if you take it and turn it over, now the bottom is just flat. And you take a big hammer and you literally sink it into a bowl. You stretch that metal down. And then you have a tool, it's like a chisel, you can groove out sections. You cut it off, you burn it on a fire, and then you work these sections up and down, just like you bend a hanger back and forth. You can get it right to the right spot where it won't break. If you work it too much, it'll break, you've lost your drum. But if you can get it just right, you get it to a point where that piece of metal will vibrate. And you all know sound is vibration. So if you can make a note and you can anchor the area around it, you can control the sound that comes out of that metal, because the geometry will dictate the waves that come out of it, okay? And when you get into really advanced tuning, that is now pretty much the standard. Each of these notes has to be tuned with very specific overtones and octaves, so it's not a single note. This note is an F, but there's another F right here, and a higher F octave above it, and there's a fifth on the side. Okay, and if you get all that right, you get the rich sound that you recognize as a steel drum sound. So when you're building drums, you have to get rid of all the bad overtones, and you have to make sure you have the correct overtones in the note. Okay, I could come back here and spend a week talking about how you actually build and tune steel drums. It is so much more complicated than what I'm telling you right now. There are probably only on the island of Trinidad, where there are literally about 500 steel bands, there's about 50 tuners total on the entire island. And there's a real pecking order amongst them. The top ones, you know. And in America right now, there's probably 20 guys who know how to build and tune steel pans. I'm going to tell you, I really just got very lucky, and I met Ellie Minette about 30 years ago, one of the 2 boys I was telling you about, and we just hit it off, and he took me in, and that's how I learned this art form. I became his apprentice, and I worked with him for about 8 years until I could finally build a drum that somebody would be interested in playing. And he just passed away. He was 91 years old. But he is considered the father of this art form. And I was a medical student at the time, and I left school to work with him. And to this day, you know, I'll still tell you this, and I love medicine and science like tremendously, but Ellie was a true genius in figuring out stuff that nobody had ever figured out before, and nobody could tell him how to do it. And it was a really interesting time working with him. He could not express himself real well when I started working with him. He could do it by demonstrating, but he couldn't explain things. So we had a very long relationship where I was very interested to really understand the science behind these drums. And since that beginning, I've worked with several other people, and we have tried to very systematically and scientifically figure out why this instrument works the way it does. It's one of the only instruments where the entire instrument vibrates when you play it. And that makes tuning extremely complicated. So notes on a steel drum that are close in pitch have to be very far apart. You could not tune a C next to a C sharp like you do on a piano. They would bleed into one another. It's difficult. Well, that's good for building and tuning, but for playing, that's a nightmare. So the pitches are not regular. The intervals between what you're doing, to you, it sounds probably totally random. Whereas a piano goes up by half steps or, whatever. So if you learn something on this instrument and you go down to Trinidad, all the builders do it their own way. So even though this is called a double second and the range is F below middle C to 2 octaves above middle C, another double second instrument will have the notes in a totally different place. So if I go down to play with a band and I don't bring my drum, I basically can't play any song that I've already learned on this instrument. It's just too complicated. I can learn a new song, like pretty easily. But if I take a song where it's complicated and try to learn that on another drum, it's a whole different feel, and it's really weird. And that is very unlike most musical instruments, where if you're on a piano and you change a key, you just slide up. You slide down, more or less. But it was done for the tuning and the building, why it has to be like that. If any of you have any questions along the way, please interrupt me. And if my voice drops out, let me know so I make sure you're hearing me. Just wave or something, okay? Anyhow, before I keep talking, let me play a song, because y'all been sitting here so long, I haven't played a song. And this is one I just like to start with. It's a nice warm-up piece for me, and it's a pretty piece for you. It's called Island in the Sun. Thank you. So yeah, there's actually I could have so much to tell y'all about this stuff today. People don't. I play out a lot, and I've been playing for a very long time. A lot of people come up to me if I'm playing sometimes, and they'll ask me something about Jamaica, and they'll assume I'm from Jamaica. And please don't do that, because the Trinidadians they hate that. Okay, and there's a lot of Trinidadian guys out you'll see playing steel drums, and people come up and they assume they're from Jamaica. And Jamaica's the home of reggae music. Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, Jimmy Cliff, okay? Trinidad is the home of calypso. Very different kinds of music. So let me give you an example. This is a typical kind of reggae kind of feel, okay? Okay, now calypso would have this kind of feel. Let's see. Did anyone recognize that song by any chance? That was by Bob Marley. It's called No Woman, No Cry. It's a very funny song because people are arguing about it right now on Facebook, what the meaning of that song is. It's very interesting. Some people think it's a guy talking to his wife, trying to console her, saying, like, no, baby, don't cry, it's okay, no, The other side thinks it's a father talking to his son who just like got in, he's a young kid and he got his heart broken by a girl and he's trying to tell his young son, don't mess with women, you're just going to end up crying your whole life. Like, no woman, no crying. You'll have no woman in your life, you'll have no crying. So it's very funny, and it's really funny because both groups are positive they're right. And they think the other side is just absolutely insane. It's so funny, right? It's so human nature, isn't it? And obviously, neither side knows. You know who knows? The guy who wrote the song, right? It's so funny. Okay, but calypso, I'll do calypso now. Very different feel. Totally different kind of feel, right? Now, I'll go back again just to make sure I want you all to really get this. Here's another reggae tune. Now let me go back to Calypso while that's still kind of fresh in your head, that reggae feel. And I'll play one I think you're all going to know. This is Jamaica Farewell. Now, thank you. Now, halfway through that, I started playing the way this instrument would play in Trinidad, okay? So I was doing what's called a triplet strum. Okay? It's very different than the reggae strum would be. Okay, so hopefully you hear the difference between reggae and calypso. A good thing to know. Now, because the instrument is chromatic, you can play any kind of music. It's just like having a piano, so what determines really the style is just what the rhythm section's doing. So let me give you an example. Play a jazz tune. Now, I don't have a drummer and a bass player with me, okay? But this would be something you would play to a bossa nova beat. This song is called Black Orpheus from a very famous movie, same title, Black Orpheus. You know what it's about? Do you remember the movie, by any chance? It's such a great story. Orpheus it's a Greek mythology thing. Orpheus is a musician. He's so good, he's so sensitive, he can make rocks cry. That's what they say. And he's got this beautiful girlfriend, and she's a little bit of trouble, and she gets banned to the underworld. And then he makes a deal with like the devil that she can come out if she always walks behind him and he never turns around and looks at her. So they make this deal, she comes out, their first day out, she calls out to him, he turns around, so everything goes crazy. That's what the movie's about. But it's set in Rio de Janeiro, and it's about carnival time. So it's funny that I didn't know that when I learned this song. I learned this song because when I was about 20 years younger and I was trying to get steel bands into elementary schools and middle schools, someone said, you know, Dave, you need to play something really classical and jazzy because, you know, some of the music people here, they don't connect with this. So playing calypso for them isn't going to, turn them on and want to do this. So this was the song I learned for that. And this song has got me building so many steel bands across America. It's amazing. So this is Black Orpheus. And it normally, like when we perform this, we're playing bossa nova is the style. Okay. So thank you. So very different style, right? Right. Okay. Now I want to try to explain one more sort of concept to you because it's really important, but it's going to be hard to do this unless I talk really fast. Okay? So just bear with me. The steel bands in Trinidad are huge. They are 120 people per orchestra. They have at least 10 different kinds of steel drums. And they have probably 10 to 15 people playing each type. So this is a double second, okay? There might be, you all might be the double second section. The way they learn music, they meet at night in the pan yard. That's what they're called. Not steel drum yard, pan yard. And like down in Trinidad, these are sticks. If I'm in Trinidad, I use my sticks to play pan. In America, I use my mallets to play the steel drum, okay? The way this music is taught, it's unbelievable. They have a competition called Panorama. It's like the Super Bowl of steel drums. The bands compete for months. They start off with 100 bands. They perform solid for 3 days and nights. They march on stage, all 120 people, double-decker bus in the middle with percussionists on it. They all play their music. They get scored. And at the end of 3 days, they'll eliminate 3 bands. They all go home and practice. They come back next weekend. They'll eliminate a couple more. It keeps going and going. Now, when they learn this music, the arranger sings the part to the first chair of each instrument. So if you're the first chair of the double seconds, just like in a conventional orchestra, first violinist, usually the best violinist. So I would come up to you and I would say, okay, we have 5 minutes of the music worked out. Here's the next 10 seconds. It goes ba-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da, and you have to play it on your drum. Okay? And you might go, and I'll be like, no, no, no. Listen, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, you got it. You then turn around and show them. Those two. You sing it to them or you show them. They get it, you turn around and show the next two. Meanwhile, I go over to the bass section and I say, while they're playing da-da-da-da, I want you playing boom-ka-ka-ka, boom-ka-ka-ka. And you'll have to find it, boom-ka-ka-ka, boom-ka-ka. Once you get it, you show him, you show those two. Then I say, okay, both sections have it. Let me hear you 2 sections together. You play that little phrase, 5 seconds of music together. I say, great. Now I go over to the cellos. For you guys, you're playing blah, blah, blah. I sing it to you, you teach them, blah, blah, blah. Then I say, okay, let's try 3 groups together. Let's do it. We do it. 4 groups, 5 groups, 6 groups, 7 groups, 8 groups. We have the whole 120 people now have learned 7 seconds of music without anything written down. No. And we just play that 7 seconds over and over. Then you hear this sound. Everybody takes a break. Around the perimeter of the steel band in Trinidad are little carts, and people are selling roadie and rum and coke and callaloo and things. And everybody goes and they have a drink, for real. These practices start at 9, they go till 1 or 2 in the morning. Everyone has a drink, they come back, the arranger says, okay, let's play that 7 seconds of music. And guess what? It's a mess. Everyone's had a drink, they've had something to eat, they were liming, talking to their friends, they forget it. They do it a few more times, it comes back. And I've been through this process so many times. They learn it, they drink, they forget it, they relearn it, and then they have it forever. No, I'm serious. This is how they learn these songs. In all the steel bands down there, this is the process. And it keeps going and going. And at the end of the night at 1 o'clock, they say, okay, meet back here at 9 o'clock the next night. And we'll continue, because these songs have to be 10 minutes long. And they get timed when they get played. And if you're too short or too long, you lose points. So they come back the next night. So I come back at 9 o'clock. And I go to this big pan yard, takes up a whole city block, and no one is there. Nobody. And around 9:45, everybody comes in, like right on time, right? And we go through the whole thing again. We start with a new piece of music. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It goes on and on and on. We learn more. We have a drink. We lime. They say, okay, practice tomorrow, 9 o'clock. And I come back at 9 o'clock, and nobody's there. And they show up at 10 o'clock. And we go through the same thing. And we do this the next night, same thing. Come back at 9 o'clock. And I wise up, and I think, okay, I'll go down 9:45. I go down 9:45. The whole band has been in there since 9 o'clock. I'm not kidding you. I've been going to Trinidad a long time, and I don't know if it's a joke or something. They all know I work with Ellie, okay? So I have I have a pass with all of them. And usually I'm the only non-Trinidadian in these bands. But I don't know, I think it's a game they play with me or something, but I've never got it right. And I go early and I wait, or I go on time and I'm late. Well, I'm not kidding. I'm really not kidding. So anyhow, but I'm telling you all this because in the middle of the steel band, there's a person who plays something called iron. And I don't have a real iron with me. It's the brake drum off of a truck wheel. And it weighs about 30 pounds. And it's usually rusty and large. Well, I did have, oh, here it is. Okay, but this is sort of what it sounds like. This is something friends of mine are making so that we can carry something simple. Okay, all the steel band orchestra songs, the panorama songs, always start by the Iron Man doing a cadence to bring the whole orchestra in. Because if you don't come in together, you'll lose points. And you can lose this competition in 3 seconds of your song because the band doesn't come in together. And the way the Iron Man knows when everyone is ready, they have a double-decker bus in the middle of these steel bands. It's been gutted out and has about 20 percussionists on it playing timbales and congas and junjuns and gourds with beads and bottles with spoons. It's all percussive. And on the very top is the guy playing the iron drum, the brake drum. It's my sister. Okay? And so I stopped asking audiences to turn off their phones because so many times I would say that and then my phone would go off. So I don't even bother anymore.
Is your reggae or calypso?
Yeah, right. Okay, so when they start these panorama songs, the Iron Man, and it's a really prestigious position to have in the band. It's like the quarterback on a football team, okay? It's very hard to play 16th notes or 32nd notes for 10 minutes solid. You have to have incredible timing and incredible endurance. And there's this whole thing, the Iron Man is always the best lover in the orchestra, okay? So it's a real big thing in Trinidad. But they start these songs, the Iron Man goes, and everyone in the orchestra nods their head because he's sitting up tall. And it's like when you're watching a marching band at a football game or something, you can see if one person's out of sync, right? So let's just pretend you guys are all Moravian Square Hall steel band, okay? And there's another thing he does to start the group. So the group, you all have your sticks in your hands. So you don't have your sticks? Let's pretend you have your sticks. Okay? I'm going to pretend you have your sticks. Do you... Okay. If you had your sticks, when you hear the click, okay, the first thing you do is you take a little bow. That lets the arranger, the Iron Man, know that you're all with him, okay? Then he'll click again, and that's when you pick up your sticks. Then he'll play the cadence, which is the introduction to the song, and then the song would begin. So I'm going to spin around, and I'm going to play this so you can see what it's like from the inside, okay? And I'm just going to do a short version of this song. This is called Mystery Band, okay? So let's just pretend, I'll use this. Pretend that's the iron. So when you hear the first click, you bock your heads. When you hear the second one, pull up your sticks. I'll do the cadence. That is the cadence, it's a real cadence from the Renegade Steel Orchestra. That's the band I play with, okay? And I'll play you 3 minutes of this panorama song. Now, panorama is meant to work people up in a frenzy. It's hot, it's carnival, people are drinking, they're not wearing a lot of clothing. The music is meant to foster fun, and it's party time. This is party time in Trinidad, okay? It's not like that Black Orpheus tune, a nice slow bossa nova. It's meant to be different. Okay, sticks, good. Okay, so you could tell that's a real different style too, right? So you have all these different styles that you can play with the steel pan. So when you hear steel drums somewhere, just think about it a little bit differently. Don't think of it as just a barrel, and don't think of it as just playing little island, things. You can really play all kinds of music. And gosh, do you all know the song "Hard Day's Night" by the Beatles? Okay. Let me just play a little bit real fast for you, because I just want you to hear a little. I just want you to get a little bit more out of this whole thing. So this is "Hard Day's Night." Again, thanks. So again, just a different style, right? Just a different style. Harry Belafonte, huge influence on calypso music. It's also the man who founded UNICEF. Huge influence on my family growing up. It was the only person that there was the only person that my dad was really jealous of with my mom. Because anytime he would come on TV, she would stop doing whatever she was doing and run and be, I got to see Harry. He's on Ed Sullivan or something. She just thought he was the greatest. So I'm going to play a little song for him that you all know. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to stop here because I got two other places I got to get to. And I want to have time to answer a couple questions. I got to tell you about this too, so it's got so much to do. So this one, you all remember this? Day-o. And then every time you'd hear "work all night on a drink of rum," you would say, "Daylight come and I want to go home." So that part of the song goes like this. You all recognize it? Daylight come and I want to go home. So every time when you hear this, then you sing and I'll play, "Daylight come and I want to go home." Okay? And listen, it's really good for you to sing. I forget who I just saw this like last night. Somebody said, you don't feel good, you don't feel happy, and that's why you sing. You sing to feel happy. So when you sing, it makes you feel good. That's the point. So everybody, even wearing your mask, yell as loud as you can. Day-o. Day-o. No. Let's try it again. Day-o. Day-o. So much better. One more time. Day-o. Day-o. Oh, great. Daylight come and I want to go home. 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 Oh, give me a day-o. Oh, there you go. Okay, last thing I got to tell you. Okay, I'm so out of time. I'm going to be so late for my next gig, but you you guys will love this, I think. So, I hope. So, I hope you figured out that I'm a builder. I make these drums. I'm a tuner. It's my occupation. I'm a better builder and tuner than I am performer. I love tuning. I love building these instruments. But my father, when he was 85, and he was a physician and a musician and raised 4 kids, but he came down with Alzheimer's. And he kind of deteriorated pretty fast. And one day I brought my drums down and I played, and he really perked up. And it made a big impression on me. And I would go visit him. He was in a place called Edenwald in Towson, Maryland, sort of similar to this. And except they didn't have a good activity program. And their activity room was a room with a television. And many times I'd go see him, and they had him in a wheelchair, and he's in this room. And he hated TV growing up. When we heard him pull in the driveway, if we were watching TV, we would turn off the TV, open our books, sit on the couch. He really hated it. He called it the idiot box. Okay? So when I would go in and see my dad in front of a TV and staff in the back, it really, really got to me. But he couldn't play his flute because his hands weren't working the way they used to. And so because of him, and then there was one other gentleman who was a former NFL football player, and he was in a retirement home where he was one of maybe 3 men and all women. And he was like 6'8", and he was the oldest living NFL football player, actually. But his knees were ruined. He was an offensive lineman, and he was in a huge wheelchair. But he had the most beautiful voice. And whenever entertainment would come in, he would sing along. And all the women in this facility, in this community, they loved him. And Jack said to me when I performed there, he said, "David, I want to play the steel drum." And I said, "Well, Jack, they're big, and you're in a wheelchair and everything." But the combination of him and this thing with my dad led me to design a senior steel drum station, okay? And this is what it is. So these stands are super lightweight. I have these in like 5 different communities now, and there's like 30 people in each one playing, and all the women carry the stand by themselves. They carry the drum in a little satchel, a tote bag. But the stand was the key thing. So the stand can go over a wheelchair, and it's all adjustable height, and you can play it sitting down. So I make these to fit the individual. So I have, a stand for if you're 4'8" or 5'2" or 6'3" or whatever. But the cool thing is I took everything I learned from Ellie in building big drums for 30 years, and I was determined to build a little drum that really had a good sound, because all the other little souvenir drums you see around, and I was seeing in elementary schools, they sound like garbage, and I mean that really. They don't sound good at all. So I developed this little drum so that it could play, and the music for it is large, and if you know your alphabet, you can play. If you can go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you can play. If you can happen to say it backwards, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, it's even better. But can I pick on you? Can you be my volunteer? No? I just want to show you all something, okay? Now, are you okay if I show you? Can I have you demonstrate something? Okay, put your purse on the other chair. What's your name, Helen?
Helene.
Helene. Okay, I promise you, Helene and I have never met. We have not rehearsed this, okay? But I want to show you something. Okay, here are the sticks. How do you hold a bicycle handlebars if this was a bike? If this was a bicycle, how would you grab the handlebars? Perfect. Exactly. Okay. Now, just listen to this. You're just going to hit that. We're in the very center of the letter. Okay? And here's the music, but I'm going to help you because it's the first time. So just listen to this. Let me have 2 of those. A little harder. Okay, now we're going to start over. Here we go. 2 of those. 2 of these. 2 of those. 1 of these. 2 of those. 2 of those. 2 of these. 2 of these. 2 of these. 2 of these. 1 of those. Again, 2 of these. 2 of these. 2 of those. 1 of these. 2 of those. 2. 2, 2. 1. too. Yeah. Okay? Okay. So let me tell you something. So these little steel drums, and they really play. And it does take a little bit of technique, but it's all using your ear. So what I mean is you can adjust the sound by how hard you hit. Too hard, if you leave the stick on the drum, it doesn't sound very good at all. But if you learn to play it just right, okay? Okay, what is this song? When the Saints go marching in, right, okay. So, it's my other sister. No, that was actually a potential spam call. So, like, we don't get enough of those, right? Right. But anyhow, so again, I just wish I had more time to explain all this to you. But the idea is, this is a really fun activity, but it's really good for you. Okay, now I haven't explained the whole other side of my life. 20 years doing research at University of Pennsylvania, studying how stress and depression affect the immune system and what parts of the brain are involved in cognitive decline. Okay, and the part about doing this with my dad and this football player is very connected to wanting to do something that is a really good thing to keep your mind sharp, okay? So if you review the current literature on what activities are good for people like my age to your age to keep our brains healthy, it's learning novel activities. Music in general has always been shown to be just a very good thing. And you are never too old to learn music. One of my bands is 100% people who have never played music. And there are like 30 of them now, and they sound great. It's social. You do this together. You could buy a station or 2 stations or 5 stations. You play together. Now, I could spend an hour giving you the literature, because I've researched it, I know it, on what it does for the centers in your brain. Why are the centers that are involved in music the last to go? You have Parkinson's or you get dementia, you come on to someone with singing a song, they can suddenly sing the lyrics on pitch. Okay, those centers in your brain are so fundamental, and they are good to use and to work. So I'm honestly one of the most skeptical people you'll meet. Like when people come on and they say they have some product that keeps you young, or I can't stand it. Okay, I'm really okay, and for all my experience, all my education, I know you have lyrics, but then you turn it over, the lyrics disappear, so you're into memory stuff. To do. But even if it wasn't, okay, it's fun. It's really fun. Your birthday, and you happen to go down, and I know from traveling around a lot, and even in my own life, dude, it's, so you get that little repertoire. We bring in a bus, and you go to another retirement place, and so is this a sales pitch? A little bit. If it's some activity directors, if you're not really So it's something that you might. Group right now is at Brittany Point Estates. And holders to their drink because I told them about the pan. You know, they're doing the whole thing Trinidad style. Group of them, not the whole group, but there's always 2 or 3 in the line. That's Jamaica Farewell too, right? I guess I really do have to stop here. This to be very educational for you guys. And it's probably their most significant kind of asphalt. Please remember that these, okay, and they didn't, and they also, that was mostly doing this in the beginning. You can still apply if you eat here or you eat in your own place. Overcooked, you know, say that, and you know, we like because it was terrible. But it was pretty. No, they didn't, and actually, no, they couldn't because so big, and in fact, even though it had been outlawed, when they started marching with bamboo and with the steel, around 19 drums and bamboo. Don't play. I mean, this is what I'm. Yes.